All right, Monday, November 11th. Here we go. I want to talk a little bit about what's going on with stocks, bonds, stocks, bonds, commodities, and outside of the election. So this is kind of a post-market outlook and where we see things going from here. So first chart on the screen is the S&P 500. New target is 600, and we got very, very close to that target here. And maybe bouncing around. I think 600 is going to be, if we saw that post-election bump, and you see the post-election bump that took us from 570 up to 600, that was if you're following along here, that was about a 5% move just in a couple of days. Since then, we've kind of been wiggling around the 599, 600 area. And what pushes us above 600? Well, we are now entering, forget the election, it's gone. That's all baked in now because we know everything. We might not know everything, but we know the results of the election. So where do we go from here? November to May, that 6-month seasonality just kicked in, right? So I don't know if it's going to be the next 6 months. It's going to be bullish, but I believe that we're going to see continued optimism in November and in December. Because the next thing that rolls around is the Santa Claus rally, the holiday patterns that we see, and the amount of green that is on the screen for November and December when you look at the seasonal money calendar. So all of that points to, I don't think we're going to get the kind of moves like we just got, but we could see some continued upticking, kind of like we saw here in the October the end of September to end of October area, where we just kind of slowly purged up, maybe because we're also out of, for the most part, earnings. So now lack of news will become good for Wall Street, right? Putting politics aside, at least what we went through last week is going to be good for Wall Street too. Volatility's come down considerably, also good for Wall Street. So I think that target of 600 is going to be broken, and that's going to become support. Resistance should become support. That is the S&P 500. Take a look at the bond market. Now, this is an interesting one because we've had a very wide range. So rates were cut. We had a 25 basis point rate cut also last week. A lot of news last week. But look what's happened to the bond market. The bond market is coming back down and testing the lows for the year, which are suggesting to me that the interest rate outlook may change. It may change not based on what we're currently seeing, but there might be some baking in, if you will, of a potential change in policy, which may reflect a stronger, bolder economy. We'll see what the Fed ends up doing, as well. It seemed to be the biggest news announcement wasn't the 25 basis rate cut during the Fed meeting. It was the comments that Chairman Powell, the answer to will you resign with the Trump administration, and he had a one-word answer: no. and he wasn't going to go on it. They asked him a follow-up question, and he said no. And so, again, something that we could get into for several minutes, but I'm not going to get into that. I just thought it was interesting that more news came out of not the rate cut, but Chairman Powell's answer to whether or not he would be retiring before his contract is up in 2026. All right, let's skip to oil. So oil back in October broke above this pitchfork. So this is a pitchfork that's bearish. And in October, we broke above it, but we've been coming down and we've been hitting the end of that pitchfork or coming through it for a couple of days. We're back down here again. So even though we broke above the bear trend, we're now back down to testing support at 70, right? So after the election, we were at 75 after the election. Last couple of days, we've kind of slid back down to 70. Shouldn't be too much of a surprise because if the posture is going to move to drilling oil, that means there's more supply, all right? Easing prices on oil, but that could also potentially make companies like Chevron and Exxon actually move higher in the longer term. All right, gold. Here's the biggest surprise. So gold dropped right after the election. Then it had a bit of a rally back to 250 for GLD. Friday we pulled down a little bit. Today was a big break to the downside, and we've dropped 6% since the prior to the election. All right, 6% pretty much for the month of November. This is due to the strengthening U.S. dollar, right? And the strengthening U.S. dollar, you go back and you look at the bond market again, and where we're looking at is not today, but projections going into 2025 with the Trump administration. Projections by looking at nothing more than mortgage rates, which have not dropped. They've actually stayed where they are, if not gone a little bit higher, right? So this is putting a lot of pressure on certain commodities like gold and silver. Now, we have a hard stop down here around 238. And if GLD comes down to 238, then that basically signals the end of the uprun in terms of what contrarians view GLD and what they view precious metals are at, right? So that is stocks, bonds, and commodities. I wanted to bring this chart up because last week we were talking about it, and everybody was looking at this like, what is going on? With this thing selling before the election? Is this foretelling the election or foretelling Truth Social? And I said last week that I felt it was foretelling the latter, Truth Social, because again, you've got Trump now who is pushing a lot of his comments out on X, which he was off of X for quite a while after the Biden administration came in, and after the January 6th. All right, after January 6th, everybody kind of tried to silence him, so he brings up Truth Social. But since then, he's been on Truth Social, but the fact that more of his audience is on X is pushing Truth Social lower. And I look at this stock and I think about where it may end up in the future. And I really believe we're going to be back down here double bottoming, because I just don't see a path for Truth Social other than someone, and I'm not going to say who, someone could step up and purchase Truth Social and maybe merge it with his other social media company. I wonder who that could be. And again, that's just way out there. That's just way out there. And so again, why hasn't DJT moved to new highs? Because I think it's being watered down by X. It's a bearish sign. I expect the double bottom to continue. And Donald Trump has even come forward and said that he has no plans to sell his X shares. But keep in mind, he didn't say he has no plans to sell the company. Who knows? Plus, this will all get moved into a trust somehow and out of his control if he does intend to keep an eye on. So my November market summary kind of looks like this as we're well into now the second week of November. You've got trend stocks and commodities are still up except for gold and precious metals. Seasonals are now in play. You got the November bull. That is now in play, and we've got the election behind us. So the market volatility for the stock market's behind us too. I think that is a bullish sign when you add up everything outside of the election going into the end of the year.